everybody, Scott Golden here with the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling Review Series for the 12th of February, 1983. Got a lot more shows upcoming. They opened as I've actually almost watched through all of 84 of what's available on the network, so literally about 70 shows I'm backlogged in watching. But highlights from the beginning, or from the arena show, with the match between Kernoodle and Slaughter versus Steamboat and Youngblood. Continued tag team match. They open with those highlights. Basic stuff, and that match is returned to later in the program, joined in progress. But again, basically looking at Steamboat and Youngblood as individuals who are pretty, I guess, locked in to be individuals who are pretty aggressive here. Sir Oliver Humperdinck promises the guys like Greg Valentine and the One Man Gang. One Man Gang promises he's going to, or Humperdinck on his behalf, promises that his man is going to take control of things going forward. Jack Briscoe out, no longer your U.S. Or not your Mid-Atlantic champion. Then we open with Briscoe and Rick Harris. Some basic takedowns, and obviously Briscoe takes control early. Really good wrestling, just mat grappling and all of that. Basic things along that way, and Briscoe and Harris, who later becomes Black Bart, Briscoe's in control of the majority of that. Works him over with fireman's carry takeovers and the like. Works over the arm, drops the knee on the arm, and other basic maneuvers. Briscoe in control for the majority of the match. Obviously, the fans in the Carolinas, with Briscoe being a former world champion, going to give him the benefit of the doubt in almost every match-related situation there. And kind of rolls through, tries to get an advantage. Front face locks and basic things. And obviously the spinning toe hold gets a victory for Briscoe. Then we go to a promo segment with Paul Jones. Paul Jones taking on more of a managerial role. Dick Slater and Dory Funk Jr. Dory Funk Jr., your new Mid-Atlantic champion here. And there's a confrontation between Mike Rotundo, and Paul Jones. Jones basically says he's a coward. This is an awful promo segment, as Rotundo really doesn't have much personality at all. Says he's going to handle things, but and again, Rotundo's still your television champion going forward here at the time. And Jones says he's a coward. Jones says he doesn't know what he's doing and encourages him to get up in the ring. He's supposed to have a tag team match, but his tag team partner does not appear. Dick Slater comes out, challenges him to fight either Funk or Slater himself, and then we see Rotundo go into a 2-on-1 situation for the next several minutes. Pride getting the better of him. Dory Funk Jr., though, takes the early part of the match, really trying to get Rotundo over as a guy who could be there with Funk, I guess, at the time. That's the idea, anyway. But, I mean, drop kicks, deep arm drags, and the like by Mike Rotundo along the way here, and ultimately getting things going in a positive direction. Some shoulder tackles, and always looks like Rotundo is at least at Funk's level, so I guess there might have been a push here in 1983 to potentially get Mike Rotundo over as a major force in the area or something of the nature. Arm drags, arm bars, and the like. Obviously, the tag match is sanctioned as a tag, so we see Slater eventually come in, although that isn't until the match has gone on for a couple of minutes, and we see that Dory Funk Jr. is having enough issues with Slater or with Rotundo that Slater feels the need to come in, and then they're tagging for a few minutes, 2-on-1. Obviously, at that point, the heels take over. Paul Jones happy with this benefit. Jerry Briscoe, though, makes his way out and tries to help while being in the arena in his street clothes. Tries to help Rotundo and kind of tags with him. There is a layout of Rotundo and Briscoe by the tandem of Funk and Slater, and ultimately that's what this turns into. The Match itself is basically a backdrop for I don't want to say a bad angle, but the idea there basically is Briscoe getting laid out and kind of joining the tag match, kind of a non-finish situation. But the idea there is going back to Funk and Briscoe as a main program, but also getting a very inexperienced in promos, Mike Rotundo, ready to be a major force in the Mid-Atlantic area by far. That doesn't go well promo-wise. It does go well wrestling-wise, as I think if he had a manager and if babyface managers were a thing in the Mid-Atlantic at a time, he might have been a good contender for that Mid-Atlantic Championship at the point, but he obviously goes to the WWF in 1984, and that derails that. But just an interesting thing worth going out of your way to kind of see how they're portraying it a little bit. Terry Funk and Jerry Gray now joined in progress, at least from Florida. Funk coming into the territory because his brother, mainly as the booker through most of 1983. Terry Funk, though, kind of wearing an orange Supermanish style shirt and punch kick on Jerry Gray. For several minutes, Terry Funk completely out of control, and it shows pretty aggressively, assertively that Funk is going to be a guy who needs to be managed with the CWF in Florida still in motion here in 1983, although the promotion begins to slow down over the next several years, and Funk hits a knee drop and gets a victory. Funk coming into the territory in the coming weeks, but he only stays for a couple of months. Terry Funk not really terribly thrilled with things there. Dick Slater basically says he's ready to take on all comers, including Mike Rotundo. Slater basically calls out Rotundo, and although Slater not particularly my cup of tea in the ring, definitely good in this role. There is a promo with Gary Hart. Gary Hart basically insinuating that he wants to move to the Carolinas, take his managerial services to the area, and implies that he is ready to offer his services to all comers, whatever come what may. Now there is the highlights again, as mentioned before, of the Steamboat and Youngblood versus Canoodle and Slaughter match. The series, which actually runs through Starrcade of same year, the first Starrcade, which we will be covering, is here. And Slaughter and Canoodle, basically Youngblood and Steamboat are in control of the majority of the match. The match does go into brawling on the outside, does go into the champions just barely getting around with kind of a disqualification. Match itself is hard to watch because the yellowing of the film, and it's kind of shot from a weird angle, so keeping track of the action. Plus, they're running it almost like a brawl, Tupelo concession sort of thing is kind of there, and it's awkward. But the idea behind the contest is worth watching if you're into both of these guys, although a clearer match is kind of like the Starrcade match or the cage match from the following weeks that's shown that leads to the title win for Steamboat and Youngblood, which actually is promoted later in this show because of the cheating by the champions. But anyway, champions do walk away with the championship here. The idea, though, here is referees lose control, and that's kind of what's there. Goes on for several minutes as a post-match brawl, and again, Sandy Scott basically forcing them to wrestle in March one more time in a cage. The cage match stipulation not announced when Canoodle and Slaughter originally point blank say they will not compete, but instead announced at the end of the show, and Steamboat's in a cage. Incredulousness is kind of funny looking back at it. Ricky Steamboat, by far my favorite babyface of all time, but certainly not a guy that is super with promos. Anyway, we go to Dizzy Hogan and Sweet Brown Sugar as tag teams. Sugar doing the majority of the talking. Dizzy Hogan, of course, later known, or just about a year later, maybe a year and a half, but within the next 18 months anyway, known as Brutus Beefcake. He is abysmally bad in promos here, and Sweet Brown Sugar has to carry him, promising that he believes that this team is going to do quite well. Gary Hart joins us from the ringside area as I get my phone We'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail with continuation of the program. And again, that becomes something of a, steamboat brown sugar and Dizzy Hogan do continue that run. The Hogan eventually gets the power slam and the victory for his team, and although they don't team up long, they are pushed like they're going to be at least a secondary babyface team. Again, the mention of the Steamboat and Youngblood cage match coming up in March with Kernoodle and Slaughter is the close of the program. We'll be back with more right after this.